You hop on a roller coaster, and there's certain comfort in seeing the tracks, right? You know exactly where the ride ends. But imagine a track that just keeps building itself into the clouds, completely out of sight, like forever. That is the Collatz conjecture. For you, the listener. It's a simple arithmetic roller coaster. You take any positive number. If it's even, you divide it by 2. And if it's odd, well, you multiply by 3 and add 1.
Right. And mathematicians have spent nearly a century trying to prove that no matter what number you start with, this infinite roller coaster always eventually plummets back down to a repeating 1-4-2-1 loop. And they failed for decades, mostly because they were just trying to measure the sheer numerical height of those chaotic drops and climbs.
Which brings us to today's deep dive. Our mission today is to unpack this fascinating March 2026 manuscript by Timothy J. Dillon called the Omega Genesis Protocol. He claims he didn't just solve this impossible math puzzle, but he used the exact same mathematical geometry to redefine financial market risk and, somehow, theology.
Yeah, it's a massive leap. But to understand how he jumped from an abstract math puzzle to predicting stock market crashes, you really have to look at how he changed the rules of the game. He realized that to solve an infinite problem, you have to make it finite.
Okay, so how does he actually do that?
Well, he introduces what he calls the Collatz harmonic flow operator. Basically, instead of measuring how high the numbers get, he compresses the math using something called post-odd valuation depth. And this filters the entire infinite sequence into just 4 finite residual families, which he labels S, R, H, and C.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second. Instead of checking infinite numbers one by one, is it kind of like filtering an ocean through 4 specific nets to definitively prove there are no sea monsters?
That is a brilliant analogy, actually, yes. He ran computational stress tests up to modulus 3072 and found exactly 0 survivors in those nets. His version 10.2 strict formally proves these families are completely empty, which forces universal convergence directly into that 1-4-2-1 loop.
Right, so if this stopped at a math puzzle, it would be cool. But this precise geometric math apparently maps directly onto human systems. Like, how does a 1930s math proof become a financial minimum viable product?
Well, think about what a market chart actually is. Traditional risk models use probabilistic guessing, which, as we know, totally fails during black swan events because you can't predict a crash using data from a boom. But Dillon's structural risk engine abandons guessing for deterministic verification.
Wait, because the market prices follow those exact same 4 underlying mathematical rhythms?
Exactly. He spots what he calls family R, the pressure cooker, to predict flash crashes before standard charts even detect them. It looks at the real-time structure of the numbers happening right now.
So this is an early warning system that doesn't rely on past financial earthquakes, but on the real-time physics of the market's tectonic plates.
Yeah, you nailed it. It gives risk officers a 0 to 100 structural risk score, and that allows them to automate defensive API calls before the drop actually hits.
Okay, here is where it gets really wild and maybe a bit controversial. This exact same framework was prepared as an executive presentation for Vatican Review. Now, to be clear to you listening, we aren't taking sides or endorsing this theology, just impartially reporting Dillon's claims. But he mathematically models the omega point, right?
Right, the omega point being this theoretical state where human and divine consciousness unite. He essentially turns Christian virtues into algorithmic subsystems. For example, he has this equation called M2 forgiveness curvature release.
Wait, really? Is Dillon literally saying St. Augustine's concept of love acts as a gravitational weight that warps physical space?
Yes, actually. He argues that syntropy, which is grace or order, mathematically overcomes dispersion or sin and entropy. He operationalizes morality as a mathematical limit of sustained syntropy. Acts of kindness mathematically keep the whole human system from crashing.
That is wild. I mean, Dillon wrote that Omega Genesis doesn't close the book on Collatz, but it does change the shape of the book. It takes this terrifying infinite chaos and shows us that it's actually deeply structured and finite.
Yeah, it completely changes the paradigm of how we view massive, complex systems.
Which leaves you with this to mull over. If algorithmic market crashes, computer network anomalies, and even your personal acts of forgiveness all follow this exact same hidden mathematical geometry, what else in your daily life is secretly governed by the Omega Genesis rules?